Well, led by Senator Chuck Schumer of New York and the Democrats, the Senate met late into the night last night in their effort to push through the so-called Respect for Marriage Act. It's very telling the Democrats are attempting this during the lame duck session of Congress. This is after the midterm elections, when many of those voting on this bill will no longer be accountable to the American people. But the fight is not over. That's why you need to contact your senators before they return from Thanksgiving. Joining me now to discuss the latest on this and dissect this bill and why it does not do what the proponents say in terms of protecting religious freedom is Roger Severino. He's the Vice President of Domestic Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He previously served as the Director of the HHS Office of Civil Rights in the Trump administration. Roger, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
So you've been diving into this, doing some fact checking about the claims made in this bill. And so let me just ask you a few questions about the claims that they make. They say that, groups, organizations, institutions that refuse to acknowledge this redefinition of marriage will not be treated like bigots by the government. What do you say to that?
Well, that's the entire point of this bill. They are trying to cement same-sex marriage into every nook and cranny of the law when it is absolutely unnecessary after the Obergefell decision. There's not a single benefit, protection, or right that is secured that isn't already available to same-sex couples under that Supreme Court decision that's added to this bill. What is added is the ability for people to sue people of faith who disagree on same-sex marriage, particularly religious nonprofits, tax-exempt organizations, adoption agencies, religious schools. Any of these groups that don't bend the knee to the new definition of marriage is going to be at risk and targeted. They don't have the sufficient religious liberty protections in law, and now this bill would arm the opponents of religious liberty with a new cudgel to use against institutions of faith to try to exclude them from the public square. And you said it right. It's really about labeling them as bigots. And that's going to set a whole chain of events down the line that will erode their ability to participate fully in the public square.
Now, Roger, they're claiming that this bill would not take away tax-exempt status from organizations, churches, and others that refuse to recognize same-sex marriage. What do you say to that?
Well, it's naive to think that's not how it's going to be used. During the oral arguments back under Obama, his chief lawyer before the Supreme Court was asked, is this going to be an issue with tax-exempt status? And he admitted that, yes, it was. He was honest. This is what happens when the left puts each brick on the wall. And when you turn around, all of a sudden, religious liberty is gone. There's people on one side of the brick wall and religious liberty excluded on the other. And one of the ways they're going to do it is tax-exempt status. You heard Beto O'Rourke say that that's what they're going after, right? This is not a secret. It is obvious. And once you establish a national policy, when the people through the representatives in Congress say this and compare same-sex marriage rights and those who object to people against interracial marriage, which is what this bill does, we know where this leads. It's happened before. In the 80s, a religious university lost their tax-exempt status because they violated non-discrimination laws, but that was race. And they want to compare people who believe in man-woman marriage to racists.
So the bill itself doesn't take away that tax exemption, but it's not going to prevent it from being taken away elsewhere.
That's exactly right, right? So the bill is saying same-sex marriage is equivalent to anti-miscegenation laws, right? The interracial marriage question. Once you set that policy in place, the IRS will have all it needs to say, well, we have Obergefell, we have this, so-called Respect for Marriage Act. We're now going to take the tax-exempt status away from religious organizations who treat man and woman marriage as the only true version of marriage. That's the way it goes, and the left knows this. That's why they're unwilling to adopt any amendment to actually prevent this from happening.
A good point, Roger, because, you've seen this. You've been on the inside of government, and Congress will often just pass kind of a nebulous law or something that is open-ended. They don't do the dirty work, but they let somebody else do it. In this case, they're not going to be the ones to take away the tax-exempt status of organizations that refuse to acknowledge same-sex marriage, but they don't prohibit the IRS from doing it.
Well, they're setting the stage for it. It's not just that they don't prohibit it, they're giving them the ammunition to do it by establishing this national policy of same-sex marriage when there's no other reason for it. Because Obergefell already covers all the rights and privileges under same-sex marriage. So it's just a gratuitous swipe to create a right for people to sue people who disagree on the question of marriage. It's about exclusion, driving people of faith away, pouring salt in the wound. There's all sorts of analogies you could use,
Right.
but this is an attack, and people should have their eyes wide open.
So as I've read through it, the only thing I can come away, excuse me, the only thing I can come away with that it looks like they do protect is that it appears that they would not force a religious institution to perform a same-sex wedding or be involved in that. But there's no protections that I see enumerated in here for the individual. And the First Amendment is to individuals. It's not to institutions.
Yes. So it makes a gesture to religious liberty in saying it won't force pastors and other religious organizations to solemnize or celebrate same-sex weddings. That right is already guaranteed by the First Amendment of the Constitution. If the First Amendment means anything, it's that the government can't force a pastor or religious institution to violate their beliefs and within their four walls of their church, synagogue, or mosque to perform a marriage contrary to their faith. We're not that far gone as a country yet. But they provide no protection whatsoever for Jack Phillips, Barronelle Stutzman, these people of faith who want to bring their faith and views on marriage into the public sphere in the way they run their businesses. The bakers, the photographers, the florists, they have no protection whatsoever in this bill.
Isn't that what religious freedom is? Isn't that what that has been historically in this country? The ability to live your life according to your faith?
Yes, that's look, we were told same-sex marriage was about live and let live. That was a lie, right? Many of us knew it was a lie at the time. It was about winner take all. The left agenda wanted to say, we're going to leave people of faith alone, but that was never the case. And this is now the very next step of that plan. When they set this national policy, the next things to come are you're going to lose your ability to assist in adoption if you believe that every child deserves a married mother and a father. We saw that in Boston. We saw that in Illinois and California, adoption agencies being excluded. This is going to add another arrow to the quiver of the left to attack those agencies, religious schools that have their views of marriage that they want to pass on. And of course, we have a whole myriad of religious nonprofits that are going to be excluded. Look, this administration is beholden to the left. The left has pushed to drive nuns out of the business of helping folks in their last days who have nobody else to take care of them when they're dying because they disagreed with the sexual revolution. They will stop at nothing. And it's going to be contracts, adoption, tax exempt status, whatever avenue they have, they will take. And this is just going to help.
We just have a minute left, but Roger, I mean, this would also apply to individuals. I mean, could this ultimately lead to someone wanting being employed as a civil servant, that they have to either be silent about their views or marriage, or they may not be hired?
We would hope that the free speech clause and the free exercise clause would protect people. That's to be determined, right? There's no limit to how far the left will go. When we have teachers being fired because they refuse to use a pronoun that is different than the student's biological reality. And that's where we are right now. Yeah. So we're fighting for basic questions. So this is just another argument that the left is going to use, that, look, Congress has spoken. And if you disagree, you are bigoted, and therefore you should lose.
Yeah, that's my take on this. This is a green light to the left's acceleration of persecution of people of faith. Roger Severino, thank you so much. Very thoughtful analysis. We're going to have it up on the website, TonyPerkins.com. We'll encourage people to take a look at it. Thanks for joining us on this Friday.
Thank you, Tony.